Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are debating on Tuesday, and we're going to go through 5 things you should know before watching that debate. The first thing you should know is each of their debating background. So to start off, Donald Trump clearly has a media background, and he's famous for his aggressive, sometimes ad hominem attacks that many experts will say do not work, but have shown to work in the past because he has had success with that. Kamala Harris has a different background. She's a legal background, and she's had some great moments in debate. So you can think of the debate against Biden, where she called him out in the 2020 primaries, as well as her debate against Mike Pence in the vice presidential debate, where she did a good job of controlling the room and controlling the flow of discussion. However, she can be caught on the wrong foot sometimes. You can think of the Tulsi Gabbard debate in 2020, where she got called out for some of her stances and really didn't have a good response. And then she also has some awkward interviews. The one that comes to mind for me is her border interview, where she was asked if she'd gone to the border and she didn't really have a good answer. And she just kind of resorts to that awkward laugh, which I don't think is great for her. But if she's caught on the wrong foot, that seems to be her last resort go-to. The second thing to know before watching this debate would be about the rules. So the debate will be moderated by David Muir and Lindsay Davis of ABC. Now, if you don't know them, I know David Muir. He does World News Tonight, and I personally think he's a pretty good, fairly objective voice, and he does a good job of reporting, and he's pretty stern, which is a good thing if you're hosting a debate, and he seems to be able to control a room. You've probably seen David Muir before. Lindsay Davis, I think, is a little bit less well-known, but she does work with David Muir within ABC, and I think she probably will be okay, and has a lot of experience in this realm, but she does seem to be a little bit more left-leaning, perhaps. Additionally, there will be no audience, which will clearly help Vice President Kamala Harris. Feeding off an audience is clearly one of Donald Trump's skills, so not having an audience there will clearly help Vice President Kamala Harris. And in the lead up for the debate, Donald Trump won the coin toss, so he will get to give the last closing statements. I think they're going to give 2-minute closing statements. That will be Kamala Harris first and Donald Trump last. There is no opening statements for this debate. The third thing to know before going into this debate is that Trump and Harris have been preparing in very different ways, and you would expect this knowing anything about them. So Vice President Harris has been using her lawyer background to prepare specific arguments and going through 2-minute talking points and preparing for what will be a debate. There was a good AP article about how they're both approaching this, and Kamala Harris is clearly going at this debate with an intention to be prepared. She's been talking with Clinton advisors and other Democratic leaders within the debate community. Whereas Donald Trump is doing the Donald Trump thing, which is going to the media and just speaking to the media directly. He's been on podcasts. He's been on a number of them very recently. And there was a story that he even had been talking with Tulsi Gabbard lately. So there's clearly some idea where Donald Trump thinks he's in a good spot, and he's going to use what he's been talking about on the podcast and his experience in the media, and probably, after having talked to Tulsi Gabbard, probably there will be some ad hominem attacks that we talked about before, but that is where Donald Trump thrives the best, and that is what his strength is in debate. So you would expect nothing less for this incredibly important debate. The fourth thing to know before watching this debate would be that Republicans have been urging Trump to focus on policy and not focus on personal attacks. Politico released a pretty good article from Natalie Allison, Lisa Kaczynski, Kimberly Leonard, and Alex Eisenstadt, and they brought up multiple different Republican leaders and big names within the Republican Party that have talked to the media and said that they want to see Donald Trump focus on some of the policy struggles of the Biden administration rather than focus on the personal attacks we've seen him do time and time again. They have quotes in the article from people like Newt Gingrich and Lindsey Graham and even Kellyanne Conway have been talking about this topic. However, what we've seen time and time again is that Donald Trump with his media experience, knows what will fit for the American people. And so you saw in the first debate, Donald Trump did focus on the policy side, but it's because he knew Joe Biden couldn't defend the policy side. And so he went with that approach. I think that if he personally views some of the personal attacks on Kamala Harris as beneficial for his campaign, he will go for them. And honestly, even though I'm not a huge Trump supporter, I'm not a huge Trump fan, it seems to have worked for him before. And so if I were a Kamala Harris supporter, if I were a Harris fan, I would be very cautious of just throwing away any Trump ad hominem, Trump personal attacks on Kamala Harris, because we've seen it work for him before, time and time again. And the fifth thing to know before going into this debate would be that the polls show that this election is going to be incredibly close. So Kamala Harris got a clear bump from the Democratic National Convention, which you see pretty much every presidential election cycle. It seems like Harris has a slight lead right now, but that lead is teeny tiny. And she leads in some key swing states. I think if, the polling stopped right now, she would win in some key swing states. But that has her winning states like Georgia and Nevada and Michigan, which we know are going to be incredibly close. And so some of these states are going to come down to little things. And it could very well be this debate that we are going to watch on Tuesday night that could be the separating force in this election. Anybody who's analyzed polling data knows that if the polling data shows that it's within 2 points, that's basically a tie. And so this election is basically a tie in several battleground states and nationally. So this debate is going to be incredibly important. The debate is Tuesday night on ABC. I would encourage you to watch, and make sure to watch and make sure to vote for whoever you think does best in November.